very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. It's Good Afternoon Ghana, looking into what we're wrapping up the week with, and that has to do with in Parliament today. And Ghana probably will be sitting and waiting for maybe another surprise that will come out from the August House. So what's the issue? The issue is that the IMF that we have gone to, we're still having more conditions, precedents, right? Conditions, precedents to fulfill, and that's to rake in some more revenue. So it's suspected that some 3 extra tax bills will be laid in Parliament. Work has been done on it. So far, the procedure has gotten to the point where we have to vote because minority is still standing on the point where they do not want to approve any bill that seem to be placing more pressure on the pockets of ordinary Ghanaians. Remember that last week, we faced the shock of our lives when we had a number of them, more than 30 minority members voting in the direction of the majority to support, a bill of the voting or the nominees of ministers appointed by His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, meaning that we would have to, be paying. But remember that these ministers were supposed to replace. But the minority's condition was that cut down the size of government or we're not approving any minister. And since they didn't get a response to that, they decided to vote against the ministers that have been nominated and, vetted by the appointments committee already. But as it is now, or as it stands now, those ministers have been approved by the voting that was put together by Parliament, right? So now there's another voting that's approaching that has to do with these 3 taxes that we're expecting that will be passed and Ghanaians will be paying more. Are minority members, or maybe I should say, are some minority members going to vote towards the direction of the majority again so that these 3 extra taxes that are going to be slapped on Ghanaians will take effect, and then we can rake in more revenue to secure the IMF program that we want to sign onto. And we're in the month of March. We were expecting that we will be successful by the end of this month. Obviously, it's not possible. Today is the 31st of March, 2023. Where does Ghana stand? Do you want, to pay more so that we can secure this, and then from there we can build on better economic management, or you want to go down, fall, and then start building again? How is that going to be? We'll be speaking with some analysts there on this. Julius Jima, who is a fiscal policy analyst, will join us. And then we'll also we'll have Michael Nketia. Not Michael, but we'll have another guest. I think one of my producers said me without see who it is. We'll come back shortly to do the analysis. You're welcome back. Let's now go into Zoom straight and speak with Julius Jima, who is fiscal policy analyst on, where Ghana is going to as far as the economy is concerned. Julius, thank you for your time. You're welcome to Good Afternoon Ghana. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me, and a very good
I'm sorry, you have to unmute. Kindly unmute.
Yes,
okay, great. I can hear you now. So
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Thanks for your time. So, Julius, firstly, take us through the journey of when Ghana decided to finally go through the IMF. What has happened so far? We've been through local or domestic debt exchange program. We're now trying to manage the international debt exchange program as well. We have now come back home, to impose more taxes, amidst government's management of issues where we have to deal, or we had to deal with, approving more ministers last week just to replace the old ones that, were out of office, which also turned into another banter. Take us through the journey, how you think we're looking like in the face of financial and economic analysts.
Thank you so much, and then once again, a very good afternoon to your cherished viewers. I think that, yes, like you rightly said, taking us back memory lane, we are going to look at the 2023 budget. That was two. Sorry, 2023 budget. If we look at, first of all, anytime the budget is presented, the budget looks at economic policies of the country and as well as look at the budget statement. So economic policies, we are looking at macroeconomic indicators, we are also looking at monetary policy issues. Then again, with the budget statement, as we all know, budget is just revenue and then expenditure. So government come to tell Ghanaians that, look, as we are coming to begin 2023, these are my estimate for revenue and my estimate for expenditure. But every budget, at the time of every budget presentation, so for 2023 budget will come to confirm actual figures or actual transactions that has happened in 2022. So if we could recall, at the budget presentation, the minister gave us a clear indication of what revenue that was realized in the year ended 2022. At the beginning of 2022, government was estimating that he's going to rake in some 100.5 billion Ghana cedis, and this was at the beginning of 2022. And then the expenditure was amounting to 137 billion Ghana cedis. So that leaves a deficit of 37 billion. So these were the forecasts, these were the estimate. And as we all know in management accounting, budget is just, a plan of action quantified in monetary terms. So if you have any plan, if you have any desire to do something, any policy, any program, and you're able to quantify it, it becomes your budget. And it is expected of the finance minister through the Public, Financial Management Act to present this budget to Ghanaians. So 2022, the minister was looking at what? 100.5 as revenue, 137 as expenditure. But clearly what happened in 2022 was not going to allow the government to be able to rake in that 100.5, in terms of revenue. And the simple reason was what happened in the economy with regards to Russia invasion in Ukraine that had some external, effect on our economy. Let me put the preamble clear. You see, our economy is an import-driven economy.
Yeah.
So anytime there are internal distortions or external distortions, clearly we are going to have an impact. And this is very simple. So, the way we trade as a country, we are also trading with the Chinese, we are trading with Europe, we are trading with America. So when we look at, international trade, there is this thing that goes on. Again, we are heavily dependent on what? Dollars. That is dollarization of the economy because of the kind of international trade that we do. So aside the figures that the minister presented that I want to rake in 100.5 billion, but I'm going to spend 137 billion. Obviously, you can see that there's a deficit of 37 increasingly over time. Now, when the invasion happened, there was some effect, that we experienced in our economy. First of all, the effects are such that, Russia, that is a global player in commodity, that is supply of crude oil, try to kind of cut down the demand or the supply in terms of global, purchase of crude. So that affected the economy. The issue is that if we look at the value of money that we spend in the refined petroleum product against what deficit in terms of the crude, and the crude is heavily traded in dollars. So aside managing your economy, the Bank of Ghana is really pressurized with the issue of making sure that they have the dollars sitting down there so that these importers, anytime that they need these dollars, Bank of Ghana will supply to them. Now, the figures are such that every month, it is costing government $300 to $350 million to be able to bring in refined petroleum product. we can also look at in terms of our export, what we, produce in terms of crude and also sell to the global market. But when we do the net off, clearly we don't see the gains. So the dollarization of our economy coupled with power generation, now we have seen what is happening in, the power sector as well. Just some small maintenance that at Trouble Gas has been shut down. We are seeing, shedding of load. And the minister told us that it is also costing the country some $1 billion annually to give us sustainable power. So with regards to our economy with importation, it is affecting Forex. Our cedi is depreciating. Then again, we are trading or depending on consumption of refined petroleum products. So the cascading effect with transportation, goods were rising. We saw the price of sunflower oil that became a news in the country. We saw people hoarding Forex in the country that the Bank of Ghana was going after them. So this actually gave our economy a lot of pressure and worsened our plight. Already, we are an import driven. So all these conditions, when happened, it came to worsen us. And we shouldn't also forget that we were coming at the back of COVID, where government has actually spent a lot of money with COVID transactions and the revenues were low. So the increasing budget deficit, as well as government expenditure. And again, when we go back to the expenditure figures, one of the key expenditure items that was affecting government was interest payment. Clearly, government was, anytime you present your budget and there's a deficit, there are two alternative financing measures that government undertook to be able to get the money and balance your budget. It's either you impose taxes or you go and borrow. Mm-hmm. Now, we saw the overborrowing, to be able to cushion our budget with time. That brought about, government or current government not being able to finance its borrowings because the interest that we're paying were too much. And again, when our cedi was depreciating with the effect and the challenges of the global economic outlook, which Ghana is a part, and we saw the effect in 2021 COVID, 2022 Russia, obviously, government was exchanging a lot more to be able to make up for the same dollars that government has borrowed. We can see with the likes of Eurobonds, our bilateral debt. And again, as we are our conversation travels, we'll come to the point that as we are negotiating with China on our bilateral debt. So just the cedi depreciation alone, in the 2022 budget, government, budgeted that he's going to pay, some 37 billion in interest payment. Mm-hmm. As fast forward in 2022, the mid-year revision saw that government has revised the 37 billion only on interest payment to 41 billion, Ghana cedis. And the only justification was what our cedi depreciation and inflation coming in as a factor. So the increasing budget deficit, as well as the cedi depreciating and all that, leaves government no money to be able to service your debt. Now, when the commodity prices were going up, transportation were going up, cost of living were going up, it actually brought a lot of heat on Ghanaians, on the economy. So that was also leaving something what we call that the importation were exceeding the export that we're having as a country. Right. Therefore, government decided that, look, we cannot wait since there is no money. Let us go and look for some alternative financing measure, which is just bringing some liquidity into the country and come and cushion, our economic growth, our fiscal stability. So that was the decision government took at the time to just go to the IMF, after preaching or after talking about the fact that the government will not go to the IMF and we have the resources in our country and we can generate the revenue ourselves. At the back of e-levy, the anticipation at the time was that mobile trade volumes or mobile money trade transactions has exceeded some 500 billion Ghana cedis. So the minister was doing the projection that, look, if I'm able to get some 1.5% on that trade volume transaction on mobile money, I'll be getting in some 5 billion, Ghana cedis, and that will augment government revenue. So the thinking at the time was that going to the IMF was not needed. And that is why the finance minister was, talking about it. But hey, we saw what happened. we saw our same parliament coming in, a lot of stakeholder engagement was not done. People kick against e-levy, starting from parliament, minority, majority, with the nature of our parliament, the hang status of our parliament. So e-levy didn't actually fly the way government wanted it to fly. So the revenues were not coming. So still, clearly, since your revenues were not coming and you have an increasing budget expenditure, which automatically going to, translate into a budget deficit. And of course, you have a certain interest that you are paying on the loans that or the bonds that you have taken from ordinary Ghanaians and then the international market. Then you have to clearly, go and look for some money from somewhere. So government have to now, take a humble pie and then go to IMF and then, go and seek for some $3 billion in terms of what balance of payment support.
Right.
And the balance of payment support situation whereby, as a country, the import that government has been talking about, or the importation that we know that, we have been talking about, that Ghana, we can only see some good fortunes when we begin to industrialize our economy, when we begin to focus more on export and be getting foreign direct investment and be looking at what foreign exchanges that will go to build up our gross international reserves at the Bank of Ghana, so that the other sectors of the economy that are looking for dollars to be able to bring in the supply that we need and balance our economy, they will get it. So the decision for government to go to the IMF was clearly to be able to balance our economy in terms of what fiscal stability. So at the time,
so Julius,
you want to come in?
Yeah, at the point where we decided to go to the IMF, I mean, there were a lot of policy decisions or government activities that were brought under questioning. For example, the president flying private jets. And I remember it was after a few months that the president had stopped flying the private jets that we went to the IMF. So then I was questioning, how fit was our projections? Were we projecting? Were we looking at our books? How well were we, into some deliberations with stakeholders to see where we will get to, so that e-levy didn't have to go through what it went through. Now we are at a point where government says, I'm presenting 3 different budgets to Parliament. Parliament from the minority side and maybe some other, analysts are also questioning government cutting down its size of government. And government seemed not to be heeding to it. As a fiscal policy analyst, what do you think is happening? Because I now see myself from one question to the other also asking, why are you refusing to cut down government size and still demanding for more money when we can obviously do away with some of the expenditure, captured? If you look at CAPEX and what we're spending, why can't we just cut down some of the size? Because they are low-hanging fruits that we can actually do away with. Why do we have to go through this struggle? Because also look at how the US, and maybe I should say BRICS, is fighting over Africa. Now we find ourselves in the middle doing negotiations with the US, and we're doing negotiations with BRICS, or we're benefiting from BRICS as well. Is that economically smart?
Thank you so much. And I think that but where we stand at the moment leaves a lot of room for thinking, a lot of room for much more forecasting, a lot of stakeholder consultation and engagement, a lot of work that we have to do as a country. Yes, the call for president to cut down expenditure, to review government size, flying in private jets, and then looking at other expenditures that doesn't merit our financial situation or our financial position at the time was clearly justifiable. Of course, if your budget is high and then your expenditure or your deficit are going up, clearly it is not financially prudent to be doing that at that particular material time. That notwithstanding, again, to be fair to government, government first term, government second term. Government currently is also in the second term. First term, we were not hearing some of these difficulties and challenges and cutting down of government side, because at the beginning when government came into power, I think the president justified the reason why he has had a bigger government size or in terms of administration. But the point is that when your revenues are dwindling, of course, you have to come back to the table and readjust yourself.
Right.
So I think now we should begin to look more into our expenditures. But Anne, isn't it interesting to note that if we look at our budget expenditure items, when you sum up only 3 items, about 8 of them, when you sum 3 out of the 8 of, clearly you will exceed your revenue. If you sum up public sector, that is compensation of employees, government sector employees, if you add your interest payment that you are paying, then you add subsidies to metropolitan ministries and then district assemblies, the subsidies and grant that government gives to them to work. These expenditure items, override the revenue. So the question is, what happens to consumption? What happens to capex? So if you check the figures, you can see that clearly government have very little to do capital, project or capital expenditure. Therefore, the issue here is when government look at it, then the government has to go back and look, what do we do then again? Do we go and borrow or do we impose some form of taxes? Again, one of the decisions that clearly from where we sit and from the lenses that we have was, government first, some abolishment of taxes that government was trying to, make sure that moving from taxation to production, because as you like or not, tax is the bloodline of government. Tax is the heartbeat of government. Government do not do business or do not make any profit. Government creates that enabling environment for businesses, for individuals to thrive. And when individuals and business are thriving in your country, in your economy, then you impose taxes. So when it comes to government, the only money that government can make from the system is taxes. So, but that is policy direction. Now, I believe that government has really learned some lessons from that decision and they are beginning to readjust. The point is that if you look at the alignment that is going on globally, it is all about, the other countries trying to break the influence that the West and then, and the East, which is the Asian countries, are having on Africa. Clearly, they know that we, in terms of population, we are youthful. In terms of resources, we have it. In terms of lifespan, we able to grow to some level. So everybody is targeting Africa in terms of our vegetation, our agriculture, our arable lands that we have. They are looking at it because they have already, depleted theirs, and then they are looking at avenues that they can get into other countries, especially the sub of the Sahara. So when you talk to some, investors from outside the country, they are looking at sub of the Sahara, where they are targeting, from Cameroon, Nigeria, Benin, Togo, Ghana, cutting across to Cote d'Ivoire, to Guinea and those enclaves, the sub of the Sahara, because the vegetation is green and they are really targeting this country. So everybody wants to do business with the countries that are the sub of the Sahara just because of agriculture, the food that we are going to grow. Clearly, they are seeing that agriculture is the way, is the future that is going to bring the industrialization and the exportation that they need, and it is going to bring the benefit to our country. So we just have to sit down as a country, we just have to sit down as government, and then begin to engage more with us, the local folks. You look at your sector by sector, you look at your agri sector, you look at your services sector, you look at your industry sector, you begin to ask the questions from the people, because and when you go to the field, the people that we have doing business in the country, they know what it is, they know what they are really about, and they can make some suggestions to government that is going to actually solve our economic challenges. The antidote is that we have to industrialize our economy, whether we like it or not, and then that is going to bring in the returns on our investment. But in the meantime, government has clearly, declared that one way or the other, we do not have the money. Our revenues are really declining. And then now the interest payment has reached or has gotten to, a situation where it is unsustainable. Government cannot sustain it again. Hence, the debt restructuring that was announced. And government, by the grace of God, and then clearly with a big thanks to, industry players, Ghana Association of Bankers, Ghana, Insurance Association, Ghana Securities Industry Association. I mean, these people have done some fantastic job in trying to support government to achieve, the domestic debt exchange exercise, which is good note for government. So government have to clearly capitalize on that and begin to look at the external debt portfolio, which China has become the big elephant in the basket, as the finance minister clearly said. But we know that some, discussion.
Yeah, and in the domestic debt exchange program, I particularly think that government is still not being clear and truthful with the people, because we know how the pension bondholders came, and shout out loud that, exempt us. And as until now, the pensioners are still demanding for their money. Government announced that you are exempted, but government has still not, paid what is due them. So just yesterday, 30th of March, 2023, they released a second, statement indicating that government has still not fulfilled its promise or its assurance. In fact, this should not be a promise. This is an assurance, because you owe us and you have promised to pay. And so this indicates that government is more broke than we think, and government needed to get more money than those who voluntarily joined the debt exchange program. But it had to still allocate some more funds from the pensioners and other, stakeholders who wanted to be exempted from. So I'm not sure if I should even congratulate other institutions and private organizations that came on board to help for government to undergo this program, because there are bodies that opted out and government has still not fulfilled its mandate. So there is still an obvious truth hidden in the nature of where we really, really are.
Yeah, that is true. And the minister have, indicated all those scenarios. And, if you look at the town hall meeting that went on just after the announcement of the debt exchange, you can see the chief director of the Ministry of Finance was giving indication of all these. That is why government was really bent on fast tracking the IMF so that we can get that 3 billion as soon as possible. And then those short-term liquidity will bring in the money for government to be able to at least make those payments to the people that, were exempted. But that notwithstanding, I think the promises that have been made, government has given some date about payment. I think it's just a matter of money. The monies are not there. And then clearly government has given those promises. So as soon as the monies, our government get a hold of the money, I believe payment would be made to those people that were exempted. But the special thanks to those, industry players, because the question is that if they are not also supported government decision, where government is going to get the money to pay all these people? Mind you, there are a lot of banks, financial institutions that, have really written a lot of their losses, in terms of these, bonds trading and bonds investment and all that.
Right.
I've read stories about Zenith Bank parent company trying to write off the local and even bringing in some, additional funds to the local banks. I think FNB Bank is also doing same. So some of the, finance institutions are beginning to write off their debt because of what government is trying to stay on the payment of interest. So that is why I'm giving thumbs up to them, because this is real money that the financial institutions, the insurance companies are really losing, and it is really going to impact on their businesses. So clearly, the point comes back to burden sharing. And I believe that is what they are just doing to support what government is doing. They are just telling government that, look, we cannot, let our economy crash, and then we have to bear the responsibility. When the enabling environment is created.
Mm-hmm. In 5 seconds, let me know, do you think that those extra taxes the Parliament is looking forward to passing should be passed? Hello, Julius? Okay, I think I've lost him. All right, let's just take a quick breather. I'll be back with more.
Global growth is projected to decline in 2023 to 2.9%, down from the 3.4% in 2022, according to recent IMF projections released in January 2023. The projected slowdown comes on the back of persistent elevated inflation levels, tightened financial conditions, and uncertainty stemming from the lingering effects of the Russia-Ukraine war. The onset of the recent turmoil in the banking sector in the US and Europe is likely to further cloud the outlook. The above notwithstanding, latest Purchasing Managers' indices point to some rebound in economic activity in February 2023, reflecting the moderation in price pressures, improved supply chains, and the reopening of China's economy. But it is unclear yet how the recent banking sector crisis in the US and Europe. The capital and financial account recorded a net outflow of $2.1 billion, mainly on account of lower FDI inflows and significant portfolio reversals. These, together with the current account deficit of $1.5 billion, resulted in the deficit of the overall balance. As a result, gross international reserves for 2022 declined by $3.5 billion to $6.2 billion. Net international reserves, which adjust gross reserves for the heritage and stabilization funds, as well as other encumbered funds, also declined by $3.7 billion to settle at $2.4 billion by December 2022. Gross international reserves further declined to $5.9 billion at the end of February 2023, providing cover for 2.8 months of imports of goods and services. However, net international reserves improved to $2.6 billion, reflecting a slight decline in encumbered funds. The local currency has been under pressure since October 2022, reflecting concerns about the DDEP, further sovereign rating downgrades, and seasonal demand pressures. However, the progress made on the DDEP and positive sentiments thereafter, including the beginning of discussions with external debtors, improved sentiments and helped reverse some of the losses. In the year to March 2023, the Ghana cedi cumulatively depreciated by 22.1%, 23.5%, and 23.1% against the US dollar, the pound sterling, and the euro, respectively. To summarize, the committee observed that global growth is projected to moderate further, but with positive prospects of easing price pressures, improved supply chain constraints, and reopening of China's economy. However, risks to the growth outlook are still tilted to the downside, reflecting the lagged impact of policy rate hikes, potential slowdown effects from the recent banking sector turmoil in advanced economies, and further ramifications from the lingering geopolitical tensions. Global inflation is easing as food and energy prices moderate due to weakened global demand, improved supply of goods, and continued monetary policy tightening. Despite the emerging risks to the global financial stability, central banks in major advanced economies have demonstrated strong commitment to containing underlying inflation pressures with sustained policy rate hikes, albeit at lower rates than earlier anticipated.
Ghana is currently seeking a $3 billion support from the International Monetary Fund as government engages its external creditors to enable the country meet its debt obligation. The Finance Ministry, in a tweet, disclosed that talks with China, which is Ghana's biggest bilateral creditor for debt forgiveness, has been positive and encouraging. During her engagement at the Jubilee House, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris acknowledged the impact of the Russian-Ukraine war on Ghana's economy.
Going forward, let's recognize that there are a number of things on the issue of the economy as a whole that we must do, putting aside the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, even before the two became an issue for our nations. And a lot of that work is the work that I'm here to do on the continent, which is to look at how we can, as nations who are friends, who work together, who operate on the basis of shared principles, what we can do to engage in strengthening not only our security, but our prosperity. A lot of the focus of my trip on the continent during these next few days.
And all these moves also tell us where we are as a country. The Bank of Ghana telling us the updates of the monetary policy rate that keeps going up. And of course, Kamala Harris also helping Ghana to secure the support that we are also asking for from China. But in what position is the U.S., going to help us secure something from China? Well, Julius Jima has joined us again. Julius, you're welcome back. He's a fiscal policy analyst. Thank you for your time. Before you were rudely interrupted by the internet problem, I was asking if you would advise, if, the debate hasn't started yet in Parliament, but will you advise minority to support us? Because no matter where we are, I think we have now chewed the bone, so we really need something to hold on to. Will you advise that they help the majority pass the 3 extra taxes that we're supposed to be voting on today? Okay, I think you have to unmute.
Very sorry.
Great.
Thank you so much for having me again. My network really went off, so good to be back. At this material times, I think the majority actually meets the minority. The revenues are low. The expenditure, government now is still maintaining the same expenditure. In fact, if you look at 2023 figures, the expenditure are really high. Government is looking about some 149 revenue against 205, if I'm too correct. Expenditure, leaving some additional 60 something or 61 billion in terms of budget deficit for the year. But of course, those are estimates. So until the year ends, before we get to know the actual figures for 2023. Mm-hmm. But riding on, the side of 2022, where we now know that the figures aren't good, it stands to reason that, yes, the call for not even downsizing government, majority were just bent on downsizing the kind of, numbers that you have, at the Jubilee House. But again, there are other expenditure, other loopholes, other contract and procurement issues in the country that we can begin to really look at it. We can look at our oil revenues, the agreement that we have. Clearly, Ghana is wholly enjoying from, corporate taxes and then some, interest, that is participation interest. Is it the case that you have to go back and we look at all those oil deals and agreement and look at where we can stand to benefit much more? Those 10%, 5% is really not helping the country. So at this material time, yes, the majority need, the minority this time, they have to really do some good business with them for them to understand and appreciate, the effect and the challenges of the current economy, and then at least try to whip them to their side and get the revenues passed to be able to bring in the money that, government, because they are part of government. Government or the executive actually allocate some money to Parliament, and they are coming from our tax revenues. The grants that you are receiving from the global economy is really low when you look at the same figures for 2022 actual figures. I think the grant in the budget was standing around some 675 million Ghana cedis. So that is really, really low against your entire revenue that you made in the year, some 65 billion. So then again, yes, we have to appeal to the minority caucus. We have to actually, if they really have to appeal and do some good business with them, they have to. But as where we are seeing the figures and then the economy, though it is going to burden the existing taxpayer, because if you look at the bills, I mean, the income tax bill that has been sent, it is clearly taxing the same people that are earning some income in the country, just the same people. And that is why people are looking at widening the tax bracket. And this has been a matter of discussion for tax practitioners across the country. We have to widen our tax bracket. But the new bills that have gone to Parliament is going to and tax the same existing, taxpayers that we have. Then again, if you look at the excise duties and then the
That's Julius Jima.
Moving some goods to be able to tax more. Some of them are good, some of them they are also not good. I mean, why would you want to tax bottled water? I believe that there should be some exemption with that regards. But those areas that poses a serious health risk to the ordinary Ghanaian, like the smoking, I mean, and we can look at that. Government can also look at, the Parliament can also look at the betting industries and the way they are making money. If we can collect some monies from their side too, I think it is going to help our economy.
Which is part of government's program. I think the betting, we've spoken about it, that we're going to consider that area as part of the revenue generation sectors.
That's right. So just to answer your question, yes, the minority at this material time needs the majority needs the minority at this particular time to be able to get them past this bill. We are all Ghanaians, despite our political affiliations and where we belong to do our debate in Parliament. It is the collective good and bigger picture that we are looking at to be able to make sure that our economy will not crash, which our economy will not crash. That I can state it emphatically that our economy
then we
is
build
not going
from
to
there.
crash.
If it crashes, we build from the bottom. No?
Interesting, but I believe that already looking at these external shocks that actually hit us, the way we have experienced the effect, if our economy crashes to the bottom and starting from that, I believe that it is going to be worse in trying to recover in our economic recovery program. But I believe that we must have new ways of doing things as government. Government now has to really come back and then the remaining 1.5 years ahead of government to be able to account again to Ghanaians, they really have to sit up and do something better that is going to bring prosperity to all Ghanaians if it has to. But the main point is that government must look at its flagship programs, its flagship policies, reviewing them, looking at the gains that they have chalked in some areas, those that really the impact. When we measure the cost benefit, if the costs are more than the benefits, government can also look at it and try to review and make some savings in that regard, together with the fantastic ideas that was presented to the finance minister by the independent bond, holders. They presented some decisions and some recommendations to the finance minister to be able to really look at it, which I've already mentioned some of them, looking at your expenditure, renegotiating your oil deals to make sure that you bring in some money to the state. That will really help us. And like you said, we can have some economic recovery plan that would be bent on engaging the various stakeholders that we have in the country to collect more ideas from the ordinary Ghanaian, professional Ghanaians, the working class, the middle class, everybody who matter in the rebuilding of our economy. With that, we'll be able to take our destiny into our hands and reshape our economy for the better. I believe that is all what Ghanaians are really interested in.
Right. Julius Jima, I'm so grateful for your time this afternoon. This is where time will allow us. So we will engage you again. Let's see how the debate will go in Parliament and how the voting trend will also go. And then we can talk afterwards. Right. I'm grateful.
Very
Julius,
well, very well, very well. Thank you
you.
so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time as well. And he's a fiscal policy analyst as well, Julius Jima. Now, Metro TV will be following up on what will happen in Parliament if the vote would actually come off, and will bring you definitely all the, pardon me? What should I wish him? My producers are trying to talk to me about Bright. What are you saying? Oh, so my producer wants to congratulate Bernard Okoboy, Dr. Bernard Okoboy, who is the CEO of the National Health Insurance Authority, for his award. I think they were there yesterday or 3 days ago. So congratulations to you. We'll cut this this congratulations message to you as well. So thank you for watching as well, Bright. Thank you for your support in the production. We'll be back next week with Good Afternoon Ghana, and also follow us on the news team agenda of bringing you all the updates from Parliament today, regarding these 3 extra taxes that Ghanaians are expected to adhere to or to be paying. My name is Anil Fompofo.